Hi guys. Let me just pin this comment and then we can get going here. Perfect. Hello everyone trickling in. Happy Earth Month. My name is Kendall and I am on the brand and mission team here at Thrive Market. And today I'm super excited to be speaking to the one and only Bonnie Wright about her upcoming book, Go Gently, and then also just some really fun sustainable living tips and tricks. I'm going to wait a moment to let everyone trickle in and make sure Bonnie can find us here. Let's see. To join. Okay. And for those who may be, oh, Bonnie, here you are.
Hi.
So nice to meet you. My name's Kendall. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Nice to meet you too, Kendall.
And for those who are not familiar, Bonnie is an incredible, multifaceted woman. She's an actress, an activist, and more recently an author. I hear that you have an exciting book coming out, Go Gently. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I have a book, Go Gently, coming out on this coming Tuesday, the 19th of April, in the US, Canada, UK, and New Zealand as well, and Australia. So yeah, I've written a book that essentially kind of just basically documents all the different things I've been curious about within how I can participate within the climate movement and how I can be kind of part of the change I want to see. I think often, a lot of the work I was doing with advocacy work with Greenpeace and other organizations like that were more looking at these kind of larger scale kind of actions towards government and corporations and things like that. But I would come home and feel like my day-to-day life wasn't quite like perfectly in line with the things that I was caring about. So I really wanted to see how I could be implementing changes in my day-to-day life that I could see a bit more of a tangible kind of change in and feel a bit more empowered when I think I felt pretty disempowered or sort of like angry and frustrated with how sometimes the larger scale actions can take a long time. So how could I like sustain myself within it?
Yeah, I mean, it's so exciting. I can't wait to see the book, to read the book. Congratulations. I'm sure it was a long time in the making.
Yeah.
Tell us just a little bit more, like take us back to the beginning. How did your interest in sustainability come to life? You've been doing this for years now. So talk us through that journey for you and where it really started at the very beginning.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, without sort of realizing it, probably from a really young age, I was always someone who liked to kind of show up and take part and participate. So I think that's like a natural maybe qualities of kind of advocacy and activism work. And I think I love spending time in sort of coastal environments and being by the ocean and sea and waterways, and felt so privileged to enjoy those spaces, but then so heartbroken as I saw more and more single-use plastics and pollution ending up on our coastal kind of environment. So that led me to sort of like understand or try and understand a bit more about like the systems that were working for this or not working for this to happen. And that led me to work with Greenpeace. And so it was really going with them on the first trip I took with them back in 2018 on one of their ships trawling for microplastics, and just seeing firsthand, like every single time we like went fishing essentially for single-use plastics, microplastics, it brought something up. And they had been on the ship for 2 months and it had brought something up every single time. So that really brought the issue to kind of I got to see it, in the environment it was damaging, so to speak, deep in the ocean that looks perfectly pristine. And it was really meeting the campaigners aboard that ship and in and around the organization of Greenpeace that made me just so inspired to really commit to this on a real day-to-day and long-term perspective, perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. Not everyone has the ability to experience something like that, right? So I'm sure that you have, taken a lot of that to heart and really come back, and applied where you can sustainable living tips and tricks to your day to day. I know that a lot of, Thrive Markets members are, really conscious in their approach to, the foods they buy, where they're sourced, the packaging it arrives in, then of course how they recycle or put that in the trash. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the tips and tricks that you kind of employ at home to make sustainable living easier and a little less daunting day to day?
Yeah, I think a big message of the book, which is kind of reflected in the title too, of Go Gently, is this idea that, I don't think there are like 5 top things that we can be doing, because we're all individually so different. Our access to what we have is different. Our lifestyles are different. Our also like interests and kind of attention spans are different. So I always try and stress that, like, for me, how I began to implement these changes was slowly, and not trying to overhaul my entire life and then sort of burn out in 5 days feeling like I can't do this, and it's not sustainable. So for me, I took an issue that I obviously deeply cared about, which was single-use plastic pollution and ocean health. And I was like, okay, I'm going to start in an area of the home that I actually love to be in, which is cooking in the kitchen. And so I intersected that issue with something I find joy in, to just start in that small, looking at single-use plastics in my kitchen as they relate to food, not even yet going into cleaning products and beauty products and etc. So I find that is a nice way to maybe find your thing, because I think if you like doing something, you're more likely gonna sustain it over time. So that's a big kind of tip, I would say. And yeah, I think when we face with consumer choices, I think, there isn't really, I believe, any right or wrong or good or bad choice. I think there's so much more nuance and gray area within all the choices we make. And so I think all we should really do as consumers in those moments is just be more informed, so that our choices can be more intentional, and have, companies that, show transparency behind where things are from, what they're packaged in. And I think people want to know that kind of information, and it makes it easier, because like the pressure shouldn't be put only on us, like as consumers. So yeah, I think just being more informed is the best thing we can do.
That's great feedback. I think too, like for me, I'm always striving to, do better just in all things. But one thing that I've just kind of had to employ on my own routine is just like taking a moment to consider the options, like we have to move so quickly in day-to-day life. We want convenience, we want what's fast, we have a million meetings, there's so much going on. And just to take a breath and be like, okay, do I want to choose this product or this product? Do I want to recycle this or throw it in the trash? That's just one thing that I've been thinking about lately, is just taking a breath and pausing and considering the options in front of you,
Yeah, definitely. And I think noticing like when you make choices out of like convenience, because we're just used to that, like we can just grab anything, on the go, that kind of idea, rather than sort of like thinking ahead of your week and being like, oh, I'm going to be tight for time that day. Like maybe I'll prepare a couple of things to help me live my values more this week. But like in that moment when you're suddenly in a rush, like, you're in a rush and you have other priorities. So things kind of take precedence. But I think we can organize our time a little bit more so that we can keep up with these new, shifts we want to make.
Yeah, I like that. So another topic that I know that you write about and talk about a lot on both your blog and then your YouTube channel, which I love, by the way, is eco-anxiety, and this kind of feeling of, paralysis almost, around what to do, how to kind of accomplish, change. Is there anything that you want to share around that topic? I feel like you've shared a lot with your followers, and I'd love to kind of like share that knowledge with our Thrive Market community also.
Yeah, sure. I feel like, so many people, as we all are, living in a time where it's hard not to ignore the facts and the science and the headlines that kind of obviously create and show the issue as it is, which is pretty scary and can be quite overwhelming, just the idea of kind of breakdown of our environment that we kind of call home. And I think, often it's just like a reaction of being compassionate human beings. So as much as we can feel quite terrible, I think sometimes about what we've done to this planet, it's obviously the human species that have done that. I think also our human reaction is obviously, you know, heartbreak, anxiety, those things. So it's just a proof that like we're human and we're compassionate and we have feelings, and like how do you redirect that towards some type of action? You know, some days too it's like okay to feel totally hopeless and not want to do anything positive. Like you do sometimes need to just like feel those emotions, I think.
Just gotta brush your teeth and get back in bed, you know.
Yeah. And then yeah, there are other days where I think leaning on just calling a friend and sharing your feelings and not kind of bottling it all up and thinking it's kind of you against the world, I think is really important. And, you know, with these, you know, with the changes and the ideas and practices I give in the book, like they, to me, have been my kind of lifeline of just feeling a little bit more connected to not the issue in terms of necessarily the negative side of the issue, but also just like what we're trying to protect in the first place, which is like our relationship to our home and to each other. So yeah, I feel like in those moments, and also connecting to nature, you know, I think for so long that's been quite like a romanticized idea, but like we don't have to look any further than like our own hand and self to see nature. Like we don't have to go to some far off natural landscape to connect. Like that's just not the reality for everyone to do that, you know, within city living or wherever people may be, or feeling safe in certain environments. So I think, yeah, just like finding your like recharging, how to recharge, I guess, through connection.
Yeah, that's my thing. I think when I find myself too far from the beach, for example, I start to like feel unstable, you know, getting back to the sand and the water and all of that for me is like my happy place. So I connect with that very much so. I was just going to say too, I know you talked a little bit about choosing like a room, right? And then figuring out how to just focus on, or a space in the home and figure out how to focus on sustainable tips and tricks for that one space. Is there one, you mentioned the kitchen, are there any things that kind of spring to mind that folks at home could try, especially during Earth Month where we're all trying to, you know, do our best for the planet? Any tips and tricks around the kitchen, any sustainable swaps you could recommend for anyone?
Yeah, I guess for me, you know, things that I enjoy and find satisfaction of the kitchen is making sure like I know how best to store what I have in the kitchen. So whether that's knowing what type of vegetables like the dark and cool places, what like the refrigerator, what just like being on the countertop, like all those types of things, knowing like what and how vegetables should be stored even before they began to be eaten. And then obviously when you are making food or you are eating, like how do you kind of, you know, store those things in airtight containers, or how do you like pre-prepare things and freeze them, or how do you even notice like actually this is about to go like too ripe, this fruit, like do I chop it up and freeze it and use it later for, you know, other foods. So I think just storage is a big thing, I think, and just kind of keeping it for long, you know. And you think about, I always think about like the potato. If you imagine so many people through famines have like survived off storing potatoes well.
Right.
And if you don't store it well, that potato could be sprouting in like a couple of days. But if you store it well, that should last you, you know, months, month, 2 months even. So just little things like that I definitely outline in the book. And then, you know, other areas, you know, there's just so many other areas of the home, whether that's kind of feeling empowered to feel like you could make some of your products yourself is also something that I explore in the book, or even just simplifying the products you do use, you know, rather than using 10 cleaning products, do you refine that to 3 that you know do the job well, and that's already consuming, you know, less packaging, for instance. So yeah, I think a lot of things when it comes to things is also about like compromise and balance. Like it's not like realistic to change everything, whether that's, you know, people's budget, access, like interest. And so that's why I really stress that kind of like finding somewhere that you like, and you know, that place also could be your workplace. It doesn't have to be in the home either.
Yeah, that's really great feedback. I think for a lot of people, you know, doing things in short amounts of time, you know, and just testing that new process and that new hobby is the way to kind of like crack through to the other side. I know for Thrive, we often promote these sustainable streaks. You know, it might be like eating less meat for a week. It might be, you know, foraging locally for your florals, whatever it is. you know, all of that you can do in small bite-sized pieces and not let it get too overwhelming and scary. One thing that
Yeah,
I've actually been, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, just agreeing that I agree. There's kind of like imbalance and like moderation and everything.
Yeah. One thing I've been doing recently, actually, which is a very simple thing, is just trying to reuse the one thing at least 3 times before it gets discarded. So lemons, I have tons of lemons in the house all the time because I eat them with everything. So I might use like half the lemon in my water and then the other half in my smoothie. And then when I'm done with the lemon in my water, I actually put it in the dishwasher, and it just where you kind of like have all the cutlery lined up, we just kind of put it there, and it helps freshen and clean your dishes at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
that's something I've been trying, and I'm sure you have other little funny quirky things that you do too. But
Yeah, I mean, even with lemons, they make like, if you soak the lemons or oranges or anything like that in vinegar for like a week or 2 weeks, you can then dilute that. I mean, you drain then the lemons out, and then you dilute that now citrusy vinegar with water, and it's a great cleaning spray.
That's a great one, actually. And the other thing I was doing, a friend of mine got me onto this, is slicing the lemons or the citrus and then baking them. And you can use them as either like a garnish on a dish or a plate, or you can use them to like style something in your home with. It just adds like freshness and color, and they preserve pretty much forever. So
yeah,
citrus.
So many things.
Who would have thought? I was wondering, I don't know if you have this with you, but do you have the book nearby or handy?
Yeah,
I'd
I
love
do.
to
I
kind
have
of
it.
see the cover and let everyone kind of take a sneak peek.
This is the book.
Oh my gosh, so exciting.
This is me in my
Look
garden.
at you.
And then trying to see, let me find a page for something. I can find you that was the citrus cleaning spray that's in here.
There you go. What page is that? We'll have to make
sure.
sure.
In the book, so obviously it's Go Gently, and then each of the titles are Go Something. So you've got like Go Learn, Go See, Go Cook, Go Make, Go Beyond. They're all those kind of ideas. So like the first chapter, before it kind of like dives into actions that we can be taking, it really looks at just the overall systems at play within, you know, our world, within kind of human-made systems, natural systems, and how we kind of like, you know, which ones are thriving and we need to support, like let's say regenerative agriculture or something, and then others like waste management maybe that are a bit broken and need kind of reimagining.
Is there a section that resonates most with you? I'm sure all of it does, but
oh, that's hard. There's a chapter at the end called Go Beyond, and it really looks at how, you know, you can use these things you've been learning and apply them to, you know, your social life, your work life, maybe finding a local community group to join, and like basically trying to assess and find like your skills and what you have to like give to the movement, to show that not everyone has to be maybe the stereotype of an activist that we see, but there are so many other roles that are needed within the movement. So that chapter really looks at that, and it feels like quite a kind of nice way to like find, or practices to find, I guess, like a path or purpose within the movement. And, you know, I really stress at the end of the book that like our actions can't end with our individual actions at home. They're an incredible place to start and build really strong foundations to be empowered. But until policy is in place, until corporations really kind of put the planet before profit, like I think so many people will be left behind because their accessibility and time to do these things is maybe not as much as mine. So it also kind of explains the idea that we have to like balance the kind of individual and like collective action, which is very much the kind of like way and model that, you know, I have learned from my work at Greenpeace, that kind of, you know, that kind of balance essentially of making sure we like call people out that should be called out so that they can represent us better.
Yeah, I mean, gotta speak your mind. Exactly. Change is needed. I just want to ask you, it's Earth Month, obviously, and we're all doing certain things to celebrate and changing habits as best we can. Are you doing anything special for Earth Day, or do you have any plans, you know, this month to help celebrate?
Yeah, so next week is obviously the week my book comes out, so I'll be on book tour doing different talks. And on Earth Day itself, I'm going to be doing a composting workshop. It's another greatest love of mine is the kind of solution of compost and how incredible it is to kind of divert food waste from landfill and instead make it into incredible fertilizer to grow more plants. So I'm going to be doing a compost workshop and book reading with an organization called LA Compost that have different like community hubs for people to drop compost at. And we're doing a little workshop on Earth Day.
That's so exciting. I know,
Yeah.
I know at Thrive we're doing a tree planting exercise at the end of the month, and then working with Alma Farms as well to do some farming with them, which is, you know, what we love to do. You have to tell me more about the composting because I am new to it. I do have the little compost bin. I'm trying to remember to use it. Any tips for me around that? Because, you know, it's a little daunting.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. Also, just the idea composting is like quite like mystical and mysterious sometimes. I mean, all it basically is for people to understand is like creating an environment in which organic matter like an apple core or banana skin can biodegrade and decompose like it should, kind of thing. And basically what it needs for that essentially is kind of time, like air, oxygen, some water, and like I guess not too cold of a place, but you're basically just creating an environment for a food to do what it should do. Whereas in a landfill, for instance, there's like a complete lack of oxygen and movement. So like it will take an apple core in a landfill significantly longer to decompose than if you were composting it because of those, having those elements, the air and everything. So, I mean, all you're trying to do in an environment is like not have it too wet and not have it too dry. So when you compost food scraps, you have to balance it out with what people often refer to as browns, which is basically like dried things like leaves or, you know, newspaper or paper. So you need to get like a 50-50 almost balance between your food scraps and those browns.
Interesting. Okay. And then I know you have, I mean, you compost at home, and I understand you have, I think, a veggie garden and all of that fun stuff. So you're just using that compost and putting it straight back in the dirt and letting the cycle continue?
Yeah, essentially. So you kind of allow it. It takes quite, you know, a while, depending on how much you're going to be turning it or how like involved you want to be. And then basically at the end, you're basically the final like stage is like sifting it through a mesh so that like maybe larger chunks that haven't yet fully decomposed can go back into your pile. And you're essentially, making like a very strong soil mix. You wouldn't want to like plant a plant in that on its own. It would be too rich. You kind of mix that with like other kind of potting soil kind of thing.
Cool. I love it.
So yeah, it's just a fertilizer.
You're going to have to come over and help me. But I appreciate the tips. I am going to ask a really selfish question quickly because I'm actually newly engaged and I know that you were recently married. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How, you know, this is something that I think about a lot, you know, these big moments in our life, getting married, and there's a lot of money and waste that goes into something like that. How did you approach your wedding and thinking about that in a sustainable lens? You know, florals, and food and all the things. Talk me through that.
Yeah, I mean, the first like two elements to it was like my dress, which was a vintage dress. That was a 1930s vintage dress. So I was so pleased to not wear something new. And a friend of mine, Lily, has a vintage like bridal store in LA called Happy Isles. So she just like basically does vintage, predominantly bridal stuff. So that felt a great piece that was not new and was something, you know, already made. And then the like location was the next place to find, or like big thing to find, which we did on our friend's farm in Orange County called the Ecology Center. So that also meant that pretty much all the food that we ate for the dinner, which was kind of like a vegetarian meal, was all grown there on the farm pretty much. So, you know, often a lot of the things we have to think about with food is like the miles they took to travel to get there and that impact. So the food didn't go far.
Was it ethically sourced? You know, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, so it's an organic regenerative farm. All the produce is grown there, apart from the odd things like rice and stuff that they don't grow. And then the flowers that Hope did, she obviously pretty much 50% of them were also grown, I think, on the Ecology Census farm, and then the other were from like local farms in California. So we're obviously very lucky in California. There's an abundance of a lot of these kind of things within produce. So I think it's definitely a little bit easier to maybe make things come from like less far away, or even when you look at like wine as well, like the wine just came from Oregon rather than like, I don't know, French or Italian wine or something like that would come further. So little things like that. And we didn't have any like single use like plates and cups and anything like that. It was all just on glass and china, and we composted all the food scraps as well.
There you go. Sustainable letting from head to toe. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's been such a joy chatting to you, and I know our community is super excited to have you here. Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of tell folks or share from the upcoming book launch before we head out?
No, yeah, just I hope that you get to read Go Gently and you enjoy it, and I think just like make it your own. I think that's what we've really spoken a lot about in this conversation. Just like find the unique sort of path into the climate movement, and know that like we're all needed. We don't need to like worry about being perfect, and the urgency of the issue just needs us to like show up and give it a go.
It's a process for sure.
Yes, yeah, lots to learn and unlearn and everything.
I love it. Well, my last question and my final question will be, how can we get our hands on an Earthling cap? Because I saw those on your Instagram and they're so cute, and we all need one.
Oh, good. Yeah. They're on my website, which is just gogently.earth. And yeah, my Earthling caps are like embroidered Earthling, and then they have a little Go Gently on the side.
I love it. I love myself a cap, so I'll be buying one.
Yeah. I like those.
Thank you so much for joining us, Bonnie, and happy Earth Month, and good luck with the book launch. Everyone go and buy a copy of Go Gently, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kendall. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.